Can you hear me?
مش راضي يشتغل. I can't hear you يا جين.
I can hear everybody.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Hear me? Sheikh Yasser, are you there?
Hello, if you guys can hear us, can I please ask everybody to turn off their video? Because we'd like to have Sheikh Yasser enter, but there's some technical difficulty here. So if everybody can please turn off their video, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and yes, we can see you. There you are.
Sorry about that, man. This is getting too, man, I don't know what to call it. But how have you been?
It's good. It's good experience. Thank you for everybody being patient. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, how are you doing?
Good, I'm well. Hello to everybody listening. We at Access wish you are all well, and for those observing Ramadan, may you be rewarded for your supplications and sacrifices during these last 10 days. Welcome to our second part of our Mindful Wednesday series. Today's webinar is about anxiety and depression. We will be addressing signs and causes and symptoms of anxiety and depression. For some, these topics might be sensitive, uncomfortable to hear or discuss, but we are hopeful that this discussion will bring some clarity and a better understanding to these issues. Again, a reminder to everybody listening, if you can also mute yourselves, that'd be great, because there's some chiming in coming from other viewers. Sheikh Yasser, thank you so much for joining us and educating us on the subject.
Are you kidding me? This is lovely. And I just want to make sure that once again, remind people what's happening. So this is May, it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we have 4 things that we are working on, which are extremely important. Number 1, we want to fight stigma. If you have any mental health related issues, you're not a bad person, you're not a weak person, you're not a weak believer, it is what it is. So fight stigma is what we're doing. Number 2, educate the public, which is precisely what is happening this evening and what will happen next, inshallah. And number 3, we want to offer support to those who are going through some mental health issues and their families. And number 4, and this is what I love about Access and organizations like Access, we want to promote and push policies that actually help people with mental health related issues. And like I said, so we're talking about depression and anxiety today. And you know, Sarah, and to all the viewers out there, that the most common disorder in mental health are mood disorders. And the most common amongst mood disorders are depression and anxiety. And please, if you remember to mute your phones there, that would be great. So Sarah, like I said, we are talking about depression and anxiety today.
Right. You want to start with at least let's define anxiety and depression in simple terms for our viewers so we can.
You know, actually, let's start with the most common one. Depression is actually more common than anxiety. And as I do this to you, Sarah, every time we meet, what is depression in Arabic?
You always test me. I should know this before I get on.
All right. So remember, when we are speaking about depression, and I say this because, you know what, we just want to make sure that we keep it as culturally inclusive and sensitive as possible. So we are talking about what we refer to as iktiab, or sometimes people refer to it as this concept of ka'aba, feeling depressed. And as we speak about depression and symptoms of depression, I beg you, please, everybody out there, I really, really, really beg you, please do not psychoanalyze your family members. I know it is tempting, and I know that people would hear, you know, put symptoms together and say, I know it's always been this or it's always been that. Now, we want you to be aware of what these symptoms are so that when you see them, you're actually, you know what, you're sensing that there is something going on. So depression is this idea of feeling down most of the time. And we're going to go through some of the symptoms of depression. It's also very important, as we are speaking about depression, there is no life-changing event that took place that would explain these symptoms. So for example, if somebody in your family, a loved one, somebody that was close to you, if they passed away and they died, and you are exhibiting some of these feelings, it does not, it is depression, but it is depression that is actually natural, that is actually healthy, that is actually expected. It doesn't have to be death. Maybe you got fired or you lost your job. Maybe you failed a class. Maybe you got divorced. Maybe you were hopeful about a relationship and the relationship did not pan out the way that it did. Maybe you lost a friendship, not necessarily the person died, but you lost a friendship and you're feeling down. Maybe you're just a new immigrant or a new refugee that is coming here to the US and settling in a foreign land. You don't have a job yet, you don't speak the language yet, and you're feeling down. So these would all be life event situations that would actually explain your depression. So some of these symptoms of depression: feelings of hopelessness and helplessness or constant pessimism. So remember, when we speak about symptoms, we're not talking about just one symptom and then we will say that you are depressed. We are talking about a number of symptoms, but these are the most common ones amongst these symptoms. So feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, and constant pessimism. We're not talking about just right now. We're talking about it is constant. It's been going on. And every symptom that I speak about, it will have to be going on for at least a period of 2 weeks. Helplessness, hopelessness, pessimism. I think that is clear. Not only that, but you also add to it loss of interest in daily activities. Now, this is really important, especially if you are a parent and you are aware of what your kids do. You know, your kid enjoyed talking to his friends, being out on his bike, playing outside, and and loving the soccer game and chatting. And then all of a sudden, this person is no longer doing that. We just want to know: are they tired just for the day? What is going on with them? So this idea of loss of interest in daily activities that used to be a source of joy to that person. Do you have any activity like this, Sarah? That's something that you like to do every day?
Absolutely. I mean, outside of Ramadan, I love having my breakfast. Food brings me a lot of happiness.
Don't listen to Sarah. That was a bad example.
No, I'm kidding. I honestly love to run. Jogging is something that I really enjoy. I ran a couple of races and I've done a half marathon, and my goal for this year was actually to run the full marathon, but unfortunately that can't happen this year, but I'm leaving it on the agenda.
Definitely don't listen to Sarah with this one.
Really?
Just don't. Bad example after another. Okay. No. So now, so Sarah runs every other day, and it's been a week she didn't run. It's been 2 weeks she didn't run. It's been 3 weeks she didn't run. She's not sick. She's not busy. She's just home, and she's no longer doing something that she's enjoyed doing every day, every other day. So now I get to understand what is going on. So remember, helplessness, hopelessness, constant pessimism, loss of interest in daily activity. And listen to this one. This is really important. Changes in appetite or weight. This is important. What does that mean? We say change. We don't say which kind of change. So an unexplained weight loss. So a person is not dieting, but they're just losing a lot of weight. They're not eating as much as they used to. Or the change could be the other way, gaining a lot of weight and eating a lot more, something that the person did not do before. So we're looking into that change. And please remember, not everybody who's losing weight or everybody who's gaining weight is necessarily depressed. It is one of several symptoms that are taking place, people. Sarah, am I making myself clear about this idea of not psychoanalyzing your family?
I'm really glad that you are making that discrepancy. I was worried about today's topic, in which people, due to the COVID, are all inside their homes and they've probably been experiencing a lot of sadness. And so I don't want everybody there thinking I must be depressed because of whatever's going on. It's very natural due to the fact that we've been locked down and not being able to see our loved ones, especially for those in Ramadan, where social gatherings are known to be during this month. So that is a very natural thing, but there are certain discrepancies coming from a clinical standpoint in which a person needs to be experiencing symptoms over a long period of time that are recurring, right? But just like Chef Yasser pointed, if somebody lost a loved one, then it's natural to grieve. That doesn't necessarily mean that you would be diagnosed with depression, for example.
Yes, indeed. And then the other thing is, we said change in appetite or weight. The next one is also sleep changes. A person is sleeping too much, or a person that's sleeping too little. And remember, as therapists, when people come, we ask all kinds of questions. So one of the questions that we ask is, how's your sleep? And typically speaking, when people have difficulty falling asleep, it's usually anxiety. When people have difficulty staying asleep, then that is usually we're thinking about possible depression. Next one, anger, agitation, irritability. A person has very little tolerance for irritants. They're just easily angered. They're just easily irritated. They can burst into this anger, and there's really no, and that's not their character. So we're looking for that symptom as well. We're looking into also loss of energy, just feeling tired and down all of the time. So Sarah, the runner, with that upbeat all the time. Now, all of a sudden, that's not the case. She's eating too much. Sarah, is it okay if I continue?
It's
just
fine. You
looking at-
already said it's okay.
Okay. So she's eating too much. She is sleeping too much. She's no longer running around the house. She's just walking very slowly, shoulders drop. I'm saying, what in the world is going on? And it was not just for that one day because she just finished running the marathon or half the marathon. No, it has been going on for some time, and there is really no explanation for what is going on. So then loss of energy, feeling of worthlessness or guilt. That is really, really important. So at the very lowest level, underneath every depression, we are looking for guilt. Also, the person is just feeling extremely worthless. Like, I can't do this. What am I good at? I'm not good for nothing, and so on. Okay. Unfortunately, sometimes also, as a result of people trying to escape their depression, they may engage in reckless behavior, can start using drugs, alcohol, just going around on gambling, just picking some poor habit as a way of coping with it. Also, the other symptoms include difficulty concentrating, poor memory, unexplained aches and pains, loss of hope, and then also very important, speaking about death or actually speaking about suicide. And also a person no longer takes care of themselves. Their grooming, it goes down. Their hygiene is poor. They don't shower as much. We say there is something going on. Along with that, if their academics are suffering, if their family life is suffering, social life that is, especially if they are socially isolated, and also very important if within that profession and academic and familial, and they end up socially isolated for a period of more than 2 weeks, we would say this individual is actually depressed.
Yes, absolutely. And also just to add to that, some of the risk factors for depression, people might wonder, well, what happened to a person? Why would they get depressed? There are a couple of risk factors for depression, including a person's brain wiring or chemicals that contribute to a brain that can also add for depression. Genetics, believe it or not, depression has shown to be run in families, or being a person's personality, for example, having issues with low self-esteem or being easily overwhelmed with stress can a person will highly likely experience depression. And of course, there are other factors that bring depression, including major life events or traumatic experiences that cause people to be more vulnerable to depression.
Yes, indeed. And what happens is that along with these factors, we don't want the individual to be questioning themselves, such as, am I weak and that is why I am depressed? Is my faith weak and that's why I am depressed? Look, it is what it is. And what we want to do is that we do want to offer support. But Sarah, see, there is also something else, which I think is really, really important to address also, is this idea of common misconceptions about depression. Okay, so for example, a common misconception is it is obvious when you are depressed. This is something that people say all the time. It is obvious when you're depressed. No, it is not. Some people are very good at what we call masking. Some people may be depressed, but they're very functioning because they need to. I need to go to work. She needs to do this and he needs to do that because we really must do these things. So we can really, really be depressed. But at the same time, we are functioning. So it is really important to take the time and ask each other, how are you doing? Not all of depression is actually obvious depression. There is actually a cousin for this misconception. If you are not sad, you are not depressed. Remember, some people are just really good about masking the idea of my sadness because they feel that they should suffer in silence and just keep it to themselves. Or people say, if you can work and function, then you cannot be clinically depressed. That is not true. Another misconception, which is really important also, is this idea of people choose to be depressed. That is not true.
Absolutely.
Nobody enjoys misery. I don't know why people make these statements. Nobody enjoys to be miserable. Nobody wants to have their sleep disturbed or lose weight or gain weight or feel hopeless or helpless or have no energy or lose interest in their daily activities or to be socially isolated or be thinking about. Nobody chooses that. Nobody chooses that. So we really don't say that, a person is depressed because they're choosing to be depressed. Or you have nothing to be depressed about. That is
Right.
that is
That's
actually
one.
something.
That's a very common one.
Okay, that's a very common one. So Sarah, say, what are you depressed about? You have a job, you have a roof over your head, you
Don't you
run.
have a call? What would you be mad about? What's going on?
Exactly, exactly. And we would say that is absolutely unacceptable. And please remember, the more we spread this type of misconception, what we are literally doing is we are promoting that people have to suffer in silence. And that is not true. That is a crime that we are committing against a lot of people when we spread these misconceptions. It's like literally we're telling them to suffer in silence.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. It was very clear, actually. I think a lot of people, they're talented enough to be able to control their feelings by occupying every single minute of the day where they don't actually feel that depression at that moment. But we all know that when you start to bottle up all those feelings of sadness, it comes to a certain stop, right? And that becomes like a meltdown. And we don't want, in order to experience that, we want to prevent it from happening.
Yeah.
Before we move on to anxiety, I think I'm going to switch it up, Sheikh. I think I'm going to show you a case study, and
Okay.
it's about a client experiencing anxiety. And for our viewers' sake, we can break it down, the details, and better understand how anxiety might work for some.
Okay. Did you say anxiety or depression?
This one's anxiety. So I know you
Okay.
just defined depression for us. This is not it. Yeah. I know you just defined depression for us, and we went over some of the symptoms. But now to move on to anxiety, because we're going to be addressing anxiety and depression for our clients, I want to show you this sample case study about a patient named Mike, 20-year-old. Can you see the screen, Sheikh?
I can.
Okay. Mike is a 20-year-old who reports to you that he is feeling depressed and is experiencing a significant amount of stress about school, noting that he'll probably flunk out. He spends much of his day in his dorm room playing video games and has a hard time identifying what, if anything, is enjoyable in a typical day. He rarely attends class and has avoided reaching out to his professors to try to salvage his grades this semester. Mike has always been a self-described shy person and has had a very small and cohesive group of friends from elementary through high school. Notably, his level of stress significantly amplified when he began college. You learn that when meeting new people, he has a hard time concentrating on the interaction because he's busy worrying about what they will think of him. He assumes they will find him dumb, boring, or a loser. When he loses his concentration, he stutters, at a loss of words, and starts to sweat, which only serves to make him feel more uneasy. After the interaction, he replays the conversation over and over again, focusing on the stupid things that he said. Similarly, he has a long-standing history of being uncomfortable with authority figures and has had a hard time raising his hand in class and approaching teachers. Since starting college, he has been isolating more, turning down invitations from his roommate to go eat or hang out, ignoring his cell phone when it rings, and habitually skipping class. His concerns about how others will view him are what drive him to engage in these avoidance behaviors.
Yes. This is a beautiful case. This is really a beautiful case that has all the elements that we spoke about. Feelings of helplessness and hopelessness or constant pessimism. I will flunk this class, as we have heard. Loss of interest in daily activities. Yes, he's locked in his room, but he could not really identify what is enjoyable in a typical day. Okay, there is this idea of loss of energy, feeling of worthlessness or guilt, referring to himself as being stupid, the reckless behavior that I spoke about, just playing video games, difficulty concentrating, socially isolated, no longer reaching out to his professors to see if they can help with his grade. And also the way that he referred to himself initially, he said that he's feeling depressed. So everything in this vignette, in this case, tells us that Mike really needs help. And it's been going on since he was in college, I believe you said. Are you there, Sarah?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that, Sheikh. I'm trying
That's
to
okay. Yeah.
get my face to show now.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Yes. So this was a good illustration of what and how people would come to us reporting, and the way that we would write down a case, for example, in case you have not seen one like this one. So this is what we do, so that I am writing this story as it has been reported to me by Mike, and I am concluding that most likely Mike is having depression. How do we help people like Mike? Okay, because Mike could have been my brother, my son, my sister, my daughter, any of our loved ones. So it's really important that we are aware of what is out there. Okay, so remember, if you are Mike, for example, let's say just this may be you. Okay, so the first thing that we want to see is this: we want you to visit a health professional who may rule out possible causes which can be treated. Let me tell you a classical case. And please remember that we are not doctors, but some health-related symptoms, they mimic depression so well, especially people who have problems with their thyroid. If your thyroids are up there or down there, then you start having issues that seems like the person is depressed. And the reality of it is that the person is really not depressed, but it is really their thyroid. So the first thing that we do is we ask, when was your last physical? When did you see the doctor last? We want you to go and visit a healthcare professional, a doctor, see if they can rule out any medical explanation for the way that you are feeling. When you go to the doctor, and you know what? Let's say that they say that you are healthy, everything is fine. Then there are two options. A person either visits a psychiatrist or visits a psychotherapist. And Sarah, what is the difference there?
Of a psychologist and a psychotherapist.
A psychiatrist and a therapist.
So the psychiatrist can actually prescribe medications and the therapist cannot do so.
Right. And we are therapists, we're not psychiatrists. So a psychiatrist is actually an MD, they're medical doctors. So when they go there, they're able to give you medication and do these things. Now, if you're depressed, the doctor may say you need to take medications. And that's something for you to speak with your doctor about, learn about the medications, see about if there is any side effects, how they may help you. And if you're feeling funny after you take them, speak to your doctor. We have a lot of options nowadays. This medication may not work for you, but something else might work for you. But we encourage people to absolutely speak to their doctor. Second thing or third thing that we also do is psychotherapy, which is what we do. And that is just, meeting with a clinician that will talk to you about new ways to cope. And I tell you, and I don't say this because I happen to be a clinician, but I remember, and I'm not afraid to share with people here, there was a point where I went to a therapist myself. And as you know that as therapists, we're actually encouraged to seek our own therapy as well. Like other people, we have issues with depression, we have family related issues, we can be anxious, and we can go through the same things that we help our clients, get out of. So we will do what we ask our clients to do. So you go see a doctor, get a physical, and if need be, you also go and visit a therapist as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought up Mike's case coming from depression. I want to also point out to some of the viewers, there's something called comorbidity in disorders, which means that a patient can be experiencing two different disorders. So for Mike's case, he may very well also be considered anxious. I'm sensing a social anxiety disorder on his case, Sheikh. I don't know if you noticed the same thing. And
it did say that he's been shy throughout his life from elementary school. He only stuck with the same group of friends. Yes, and that is a possibility. What jumped at you when you read that case is this is a person that is depressed amongst other things, like you said.
For sure. And just to speak a little bit about anxiety, because I know we're focusing on depression right now, anxiety, it's more psychological and it causes your body to react to stressful situations. It's that sense of uneasiness one would feel before a major event. So you'll see in Mike's case, he would say that he would get like sweaty, he'd start to sweat and stutter and he'd have a loss of words before he's having to talk. He would be afraid to talk to authority figures or his teachers. And this is very common, and it's also signs of anxiety. So some anxiety, just to put it out there, can actually be considered motivation for some people because it helps a person stay alert and on track of their goals. But other anxiety, when it's very extreme, it can actually impair a person's functioning. So in Mike's case, we'll see that he might have social anxiety disorder as well as depression, as Sheikh mentioned. And so that would technically be the target treatment plan for Mike specifically.
Yes.
We're explaining that his fear of negative evaluation, he has thoughts and behaviors surrounding social situations, which that's why we're saying it's social anxiety. And it's driving by that sense of hopelessness, like you said, Sheikh, and isolation and worthlessness.
Yes, and to add more, we're jumping into anxiety. Remember what we said about anxiety last time. We said anxiety is this very vague, unpleasant feeling in anticipation of a misfortune that will take place in the future. And that is really, really important that we have this overall understanding, because next the symptoms will actually make sense. This is the person that is excessively worried about everyday things. They have a hard time controlling their worries. They're not able to relax. They have a very hard time concentrating. They are easily startled. They have problems either falling asleep or staying asleep. They are tired most of the time. They have sometimes a hard time swallowing. They feel like there is a lump in their throat. Sometimes they may be shaking, tingling, numbness, sweating, biting their nails, pulling their head, pulling on their mustache, pulling on their beard. But there is just this tension. And because they're just tense all the time like this, subhanAllah, this is really crazy. You know that our bodies, they react to certainty, they don't react to accuracy. I love the example of you're sleeping and it's nighttime and you hear, what sounds like somebody is out there, like a burglar trying to come in. And what happens to you all of a sudden? Your heart starts beating faster, you are sweating, and you're having this hard time swallowing, and you go out there after you mustered all the courage that you have in the world, and it turned out that it was the cat. Whoosh, man. So what was your body doing initially? See, our bodies react to certainty. They don't react to accuracy. Before I found out it was the cat, I was certain that it was a burglar. So what did my body do? My body just went along with me. So what happened? This is really interesting. Blood circulation actually changes. Now the blood only goes to the larger muscles in the body because we're ready either to fight or, run away. So we don't digest as much because now everything is just about the large muscles, the legs and the arms, because we're about to fight. And this idea of just constantly being in this tense state because your body is just worried all the time, people start developing aches and pains around their body. Their shoulders are hurting. They just feel this idea of this constant tension, which is really, really not healthy. Like depression, some anxiety is actually natural and it is healthy. We have an exam tomorrow. Of course, you'd be anxious. You are, or in our community, you have an immigration meeting tomorrow. So you couldn't eat today, you couldn't sleep, you're just anxious all the time, you can't talk, you're easily startled, you're irritated, you can't really sit still. Understandable. That would be very, very natural. If it's an immigration court, if it's a case that you're waiting for, if you're not sure if your marriage is going to go this way or that way, of course you're getting married tomorrow, for example. These would all be natural life events that would explain that our anxiety is actually healthy. Maybe you just went to the doctor said, let's take a sample and we're going to send it to the lab to see what the result is. And you're very anxious. You want to find out, is this really benign or is it very serious? The doctor, and that's what I mean by saying we want to make sure that there is no life There are no events that would explain what is going on. So remember, anxiety to a certain point is healthy. We just don't want it to paralyze the individual.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sheikh. I think a lot of people can relate to that. So
Yeah.
we went over the symptoms, some of the risk factors for anxiety and depression. Let's assume that we are feeling anxious and depressed. What are some ways to cope?
All right. So number one, if it is you, let's just say that very quickly. So Mike was my son, my brother, or the other example. Here is what we want to do. So as far as the individual, we said always initially seek that medical help to see if we can rule out any medicinal reasons. Okay. Number two, we also want to see what are the different resources that we have out there, access, and I'm not sure you all can see what's going on here today. We changed our setting. Can you all see what's going on behind me? Right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
can see
Thanks so much for pointing that
my,
out.
my red access t-shirt. Can you see that?
We're twins today, Sheikh.
All right. So now what happens is that you want to reach out to Access, you want to call the number, you want to visit the website, and just see what are the resources out there. And depending whether what you're going through is mild, moderate, or severe. So most people, say that I've been feeling down, say, especially with depression, unfortunately, that loss of energy, hopelessness, and helplessness, really the best way to get out of depression is actually to do something.
Yeah.
And it's the things that we really don't want to do. So taking a walk, that is really not just taking a walk, especially if you take a fast, brisk walk, it is almost impossible to, be depressed while doing this, which is really, really crucial that we do that. If maybe you are socially isolated, we want to make sure that you reach out to friends. Sometimes people just feel much better talking to a friend and hanging out with a friend that can actually do a lot of support. Okay. Number three, and I love this idea. What was his name? Adler. Adler was one of my favorite therapists there. What Adler would do when people come to him and they would speak about them being depressed, he would say, okay, so for the next 10 days or for the next 2 weeks, I want you to make sure that for every day you make somebody happy. And he said, wait a minute, how is that even? And he would literally do that. And this lady, it was reported, this lady came to him and she said, I've never done that before. He said, well, in your case, then you have to do it for 21 days. Okay. There is this thing about, one way of dealing with our own sadness sometimes, just the idea of passing happiness to somebody else really brings joy into our heart. The idea of just, making somebody else happy in turn, that actually really does come back to us. Remember, we're talking about a mild form of depression at this point. If it gets more serious, that is when we want you to reach out to professional clinicians, doctors, and places like Access. And Sarah, what really concerns me about depression, 80% of the people who complete suicide, they do so because of an undiagnosed or untreated mental health disorder, and most of the time it is depression.
Yeah, I can definitely.
Depression untreated, when people are no longer, it is beyond the loss of energy and the hopelessness and the helplessness, inability to concentrate and poor memory and all that stuff, and they no longer taking care of themselves, they no longer taking care of their schooling, they don't care if they fail or not. Now it's really, really getting moderate because it's not just now, it is impeding on their functioning and their academic achievements. And then they start talking about suicide and that life is not worth it. They just want to give up. And sadly, and I know this is, and I apologize for our viewers out there. Sometimes we speak about these topics and we try to be light about it. And we apologize if we are evoking any emotions or memories for our viewers out there. But I personally, I've witnessed at least about 4 or 5 cases of suicide in our community. And as a therapist, I'm always getting these phone calls about, what, can you please talk to this family? Their daughter, their 13-year-old daughter just, committed suicide. Can you please talk to this family? Their 21-year-old son just killed himself. Or this family, and it can be very serious. So what we want to do is that we want to identify these symptoms of suicide, of depression, and then it gets really serious to the point that people just really want to give up on the whole idea of wanting to continue to live. So that is why depression can be very, very serious if it goes by undiagnosed or untreated.
Right. Thank you, Sheikh. Thank you so much for suggesting those tips. And I'm glad you brought up the Adlerian theory. I did want to point out there for some of our viewers, there are several forms of therapy, whether it's individual therapy or group therapy, but there are also therapists who have different specializations, whether it's cognitive behavioral therapy or solution-focused therapy. So you can do research on different theories and see what modality fits you best. Then there are also prescription meds, just as Sheikh pointed out, in which you would see a specialized doctor and you would go through a trial period to see what dosage and what type of medication works best for you.
Right.
First,
And
go ahead, Sheikh.
sorry, and I think it's also important that we point out what happens now that we've learned these things. What happens if a loved one, a friend, a family member, they're depressed? What do I do? So very quickly, not quickly as in I want to rush you, but I quickly want to get this out because it is important. Number one, رقم واحد, offer support, understanding, and patience. This is crucial.
Absolutely.
Offer support, understanding, and patience. Remember what we said about the misconceptions about depression? What do you have to be depressed about? Are you paying taxes? Are you doing this? Don't you? That is not the kind of language that we want to use when we know that somebody is experiencing depression. We want to offer support, understanding, and patience. And this is really important. We don't want to rush them into feeling better, especially if they have been going through this for a while. Well, I can't really expect because I spoke to them for 5 minutes, they're going to go out and be running. No, we want to be patient with them. We don't want to overwhelm them with do this, do this. Why don't you just go and get your degree? Why don't you just go and get a job? Why don't you just go outside and look for this? For a person who's depressed, if I can just explain to people what hopelessness means. If somebody is extremely depressed and I say, look, all you have to do is just take this phone from this place, put it into this place, and everything is just going to be fine. And it will really be fine. People will not have neither the energy, nor the motivation, nor the desire to do this. So when we speak about depression, we're not talking about somebody who's lazy. Okay? That is really, really. Now we want to be encouraging, but we also want to be patient. We want to give them that pep talk, but we also want to be supportive. We want to point out things, but we also want to be very understanding. Sarah, I remember I had a case. It was a really beautiful case. This young girl, she was going through depression. So she came to her dad and she said, Dad, I am depressed. And Dad, bless his soul, beautiful man, I know him. He slammed the door and said, depression is not a word that we use in our household. And what he meant is, we have no reason to be depressed. We are a happy family. And later on, the young girl became my client, and because there was no venting and what have you, she resorted to cutting herself. And again, I apologize to our viewers and audience out there. Again, these things. Remember, we want to fight the stigma. We want to support, and we want to educate the public. This is really what is going on with some people there. I know a lot of young kids in the community, they're feeling so anxious and they believe that the only way to get rid of their anxiety is to smoke marijuana. And they've been smoking marijuana for so long. And I tell them, I say, look, marijuana really does work temporarily. It works, but here's what happens. It will make the anxiety go away. But when the anxiety comes back, it will come back with more intensity. And I know that we will have a series on all the different disorders. We will speak about eating disorders, we'll speak about bipolar, we'll speak about drugs, alcohol, marijuana, and all these things. But I'm just pointing them out right now because I believe that it is really important to know what the consequences are. So offer the support, the understanding, the patience. Please talk to him or her and listen carefully. Most beautiful thing that we can do to people who are going through this is what I refer to as the 5 T's, Sarah. You'll be tested. Okay? These are 5 things. They all start with the letter T. Time, trust, talk, touch, tease. Time, can't really rush me. Talk is be able to listen to me. Trust that you're not going to judge me. You're not going to tell me I am weak. Not going to tell me it is my fault. What did I say? Time, trust,
Time,
talk, touch,
trust, touch, tease.
touch. Yes, touch, the beautiful way of offering support. Remember what I said last time? They found out that people actually who are going through pain, a hug releases that oxytocin. And what happens is that people actually are able to deal with pain much better because we gave them a hug. And sometimes all we need is just give them a hug, and maybe we just don't need to say anything. And then tease, be able to be lighthearted as well. So talk and listen carefully. But if we want people to talk back to us, that is where we need to implement the 5 T's: time, trust, touch, talk, and tease. Do not ignore thoughts about suicide. If somebody says, I'm just tired of living, so what does that mean? What do you mean by that? Life is not worth it anymore. Wait a minute. What do you mean by that? If I can only find somebody to take care of my mom, then it will all be over. Wait. What do you mean by that? That's what we say. Listen carefully so that we actually are able to pick on these things. We want to be able, if that's what they're saying, then we want to make sure that we flush this out. And please do not be afraid of using the word suicide. People tell me, well, wait a minute. If I say suicide, am I not putting ideas in their head? No, you're not. If it is in their head, it was already in their head. And if you say it and they tell you no, then alhamdulillah, we just found out that this person is really not thinking about suicide. But again, please do me a favor. If you find your son today just sitting in the room doing nothing, don't just walk there and say, are you thinking about suicide? Okay. Don't do that. That's not what we're talking about. Remember that list that we said about all the different symptoms? They've been going on for more than 2 weeks. Their school is suffering. They're socially isolated. And that is when we might want to entertain some of these thoughts. Very quickly, we want to remind people that, with time, things do change. We want to invite them for a walk and an outing. And if there is a crisis, please do not be afraid of calling a doctor or calling 911. I think this is really, really important that we become aware of these things. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to rush and talk so fast, but I just feel that this information is so important that I want people to be aware of them.
No, I am so glad. And it's actually a perfect way to end. As we're talking about time, we are coming close to ending our session. Thank you so much, Sheikh, for those golden pieces of advice. I really do appreciate it. And as everybody knows, everything with moderation. So if you know of somebody or if you yourself are experiencing some symptoms and you want to talk, you know that we're here. Access Cal, as you know, houses a mental health department. Currently, we have 3 therapists to assist in therapy sessions. For those interested even of having a one-on-one consultation. I know that hearing 10 to 12 sessions might seem overwhelming for some, but for others, if you're looking to just talk to somebody as an on-needed basis, we can also work on that arrangement. And lastly, sorry, Chef, do you have any other last minute comments?
No, I just want to tell people, the idea of seeing a therapist should not really be something that is scary. And nowadays, because of what is happening, it's very convenient. You can schedule a session over the phone, or you can get on Zoom, and you will be in the comfort of your own place. There is no driving involved in this, and you can be speaking to a clinician on the other end. And I think that would just be beautiful, actually.
You're right, and that goes back to breaking through those stigmas, right? Contacting a therapist and seeking therapy is something that people don't tend to do because they can handle it on their own. But now, like you said, with the COVID, we are only seeing people either through Zoom or over the phone to their preference. So if that makes you feel a little more comfortable, please do reach out. Some housekeeping updates for Access Cal. Did you know that Access Cal actually offers 100 services? And I'd like to highlight one specific service within the health department here. We have personnel here who can actually help you apply for Medi-Cal, Covered Cal, and Cal Fresh. So if you're interested in applying, please give us a call and we can assist you with that process. Right behind Sheikh, you'll see our contact information, so feel free to give us a call. And we also want to remind you to complete the 2020 census. It determines important factors of healthcare, education, neighborhoods, new roads, and government programs for the next 10 years. And also it shows how we are here at Access Cal, to help provide assistance for those of you who want to complete the form. Thank you so much, Sheikh. I really am so happy that we had this session. I think it was a very important topic to help our viewers better understand. I look forward to seeing everybody at next week's webinar about stress management.
Yes, indeed. And Sarah, I also want to make a request out there for the people. If you can just write to us how you've been, coping with COVID. We just want to see, what people are doing, what's been working for them, and we want to be able to exchange these ideas in our community.
That is a great idea. Yeah, for sure. If anybody has any stories they'd like to share or comments, or even if they want to see other webinars in the future, feel free to reach out with any suggestions, and we are here to help make that happen. Thank you.
I just made a suggestion, though. I just made a suggestion.
And I backed it.
No, you did. I know you did. But I'm just trying to give people ideas of what it is that we're talking about. People have been calling us about what is an eating disorder, and one day we want to be able to come back. Remember, I love this idea of fighting stigma. So we want to come back one day and speak about, what an eating disorder is. Somebody is just being diagnosed with bipolar. We want to know what bipolar is. Somebody said that, I heard the word schizophrenia, but I do not know what it is. And we want to make sure that we use this platform to make sure that we are really educating the public, fighting stigma, and offering support to our community. So if you have any idea out there, there's a disorder that you don't understand, a psychological concept that you became aware of and you want us to, explore and elaborate more on, please reach out.
Yes, for sure. We are open to all ideas and tips. Thank you all. Be well. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, you all.